Hello, everyone. My name is Tania, and welcome to episode 6 of The Most Interesting People on My Timeline. This is a multimedia series featuring people who have crossed my path or caught my attention IRL or in the digital space. If you're new here, welcome. Last week, Che Applewhite discussed his filmmaking practice, his award-winning documentary, and his future projects. Make sure to check that out and listen to all other episodes anywhere you get your podcasts and or on YouTube. And you can find bonus content and more information at Taniadoes.com/interesting people. If you're not new here, tell everyone I said hi. You and me, we're family now if you stuck around for this many episodes. Thank you for tuning in. And today we're featuring Ilse Cruz, who is an immigrant rights activist, an aspiring lawyer, and all-around baddie. You can find more info and links to Ilse's work at taniadoes.com/Ilse Cruz, as well as in the description box of whatever platform you are listening to this on. Welcome to episode 6 or season 2, episode 2 of The Most Interesting People on My Timeline. Let me introduce you to Ilse.
My name is Ilse Cruz. I'm a DACA recipient. I'm a victim rights activist. I'm also a victim advocate at the state attorney's office, and I'm a wife. Had to put that out there. And yeah, I just basically fight for human rights.
So for some context, Ilse and I met while I was still in college. She reached out to me through YouTube. When I got into Harvard, I made a video about my application process as someone with DACA, and I put it on YouTube, and that is how Ilse found me and reached out to me. And that video is still up. If you would like to watch it, you can. Just keep in mind, I made that video when I was like 17 or 18. I hadn't even gotten to college yet. And a lot of things have changed, I think, in the landscape of my life, but also of immigration politics. So some of the information for that is outdated, but I keep it up because I feel like it still serves a purpose. Like, I've met a lot of people through it. People like Ilse, who have become really good friends and just people that I've been able to be in community with because of this one video. So that's why I keep it up. Anyways, that's how Ilse and I met and how Ilse first found me in the digital world.
Yeah, so, I want to tell you that story too, because I want to tell you how I got to your name and how I started looking for you. So, I'm like a visual person. Like, I have to see people, like, I don't know, paving the way, and what are they doing to pave the way, and to give back also. So um, I'm in the process of applying to law school, and I wanted to see like what opportunities they were with with the Ivy Leagues, because coming to America, your parents, like, they put so much weight on like education, and for me, education has been like a big part of my life. And so I was like, you know what, let me go on YouTube, let me see who's at this schools, like what are they doing, like how are they coping with being there. So I put Harvard and I put DACA. First person that popped up was you. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's a girl. I was like, let me click on her story. Let me see what that's about. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to message her. My Instagram, I treat it like my LinkedIn, So I done a couple of works within the justice system and all of that. So I was like, she's probably gonna go see my Instagram and she's gonna be like, okay, this is someone that I can talk to. But the whole purpose of me contacting you was because I wanted to like basically create community and see how you were there. And it worked out because we became friends, and now like I finally applied to law school. I'm in the process of seeing if I get in or not. So I feel like me talking to you encouraged me to apply. It made me feel like it was possible,
Yeah, and I just remember, like, first of all, like when you reaching out and then seeing like who you are, I was like, why is she asking me for advice? She's already done all these like really cool things. But then like you said, kind of to get that vibe of, the community that Harvard had at the time and what it was like. And I also remember like telling people like, oh, I'm going to go meet Ilse. Like I met her online. They're like, you met her online. Like, is that safe? But like, I don't know. I've always been a very trusting person and it's worked out well so far because I get to meet people like you. But yeah, it was I think it's interesting. And also interesting that you said you kind of treat Instagram like LinkedIn. And I feel like how we've been talking, I do too sometimes, but in a more like, in a less formal way, I think sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know your ways and your ways worked out, but yeah, I just remember like hitting you up and you were so honest too, which was great. And man, like I'm so glad I reached out because now I get the opportunity to see someone that actually, paved the way, you know?
As I mentioned earlier, Ilse is an aspiring lawyer, and I think that her journey into law school, as well as her determination to keep in community with a lot of people, really inspires me. I mean, just in general, I think law school already is so hard to apply to, and then on top of that, like being a DACA recipient, like makes everything harder. So just her determination to be like, okay, this is what I want. I want it, so I'm gonna go get it. And then it just really inspires me. And then on top of that, she has this like amazing confidence that I think it's the kind of confidence that's contagious. Like she, I'm not trying to go to law school or anything, but watching her go to law school and her journey and her confidence in that gives me confidence in like my own things. So, that's also why I reached out to her. I just think she's a very inspiring person. And like you said, you applied to law school. I know I've been following your journey with that as well. Like what has that been like for you? I know you've been like you've been at it for a while.
It's been 2 years, actually 3 years. So I graduated undergrad in 2020 during COVID, and study from the LSAT was not it. It was a struggle for me. I was working two jobs, and I was also campaigning, and it was just really hard to understand the material, and it was difficult. But finally, I was able to get my letters of recommendation. I was able to get my personal statement that I tweaked out literally like 300 times. I mean, you saw it too. But now I finally press submit, and I'm just waiting to see what I hear back. But I think the good thing about connecting with you was that I was able to kind of like see myself in those places because when I would go online, I didn't really see diversity, and it matters. You want to be in a space where you're welcome, you know?
That was another crazy thing for me because like being in that space, I think I'm really grateful that I was able to find people who were in that community. And I was like, wow, there's like more of us here than I thought. But then, like you said, like looking at it from outside, just online, like it might not seem that way sometimes. So when you find one person, like it's really cool. And so I wanted to ask also if there were other people who you like really connected with, other ways that you've built community online or any, resources as you were going like through this application process that really helped you.
Yeah. So I also reached out to also a YouTuber like you, that he put his process through law school, and we became friends, and he basically kind of like walked me through that process. And after he was able to walk me through that process, he introduced me like to other people. Even when I went for the first time to go visit Harvard, I got the chance to connect with a lot of people. And it's good to nourish those, those friendships, not just for, business purposes or, just for, hey, can you check out my paper? It's also good to check in with them because, it feels like the connection is genuine. So because of those connections, and because reaching out to people, I was able to be part of, Harvard Talks. And that was a big thing because I was able to talk to their 3L students, which is like their senior year, and tell them like, hey, like this is where we need help when it comes down to immigration. Let's talk about those detention centers. Let's talk about those cages. Let's talk about those concentration camps, especially here in South Florida and Homestead. It's just a mess. So again, building community through just, hey, reaching out, being curious.
That's something that I really admire about you. You're just like very confident as like you step into this world and you're very, like you said, curious and you're not afraid to just DM people. I feel like a lot of people will not reach out to a YouTuber or someone they just saw like their video online to help them with an application, but you seem to to like be very open to that, even to the point of like you're speaking to their 3L students at Harvard Law and you're applying to while you're applying to Harvard Law. So I don't know, like what, like is that just something that you've always been able to do, like with that confidence?
I think it's been a lot of like bombazos along the way, like a lot of like falls, you know. But a wise person told me it's not about how many times you get down on the floor and get knocked out. It's about how many times you can get up. And so it was actually Justice Sonia Sotomayor who told me that. And I mean, she went through lots of things to just get where she's at. And I think that made me feel like, okay, she can be confident and like I can be confident too, you know. I think Rihanna say something about like, just act like it, you know, just you're that girl, you know. So I think that's something that has to come in within also. Like you have to believe that you could do it. And so what if you fail, you know?
One thing about Ilse, as I said, if she wants it, she's going to go get it. And, you know, this isn't just something you see in like her law school aspirations, but just in how she interacts with people that she looks up to. You know, for example, like her ultimate hero is Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. And she admired her for so many years. And she said, you know, I'm going to meet her one way or another. I am going to meet her, and meet her. She did. You're talking about like Sonia Sotomayor. I know you also like campaigned for Joe Biden. Like you've met a lot of really cool people. Do you have any like favorite interaction that you've had, or like something that really spoke to you?
Yeah, with Justice Sonia Sotomayor. They say don't meet your heroes, but I'm glad I met mine because she is awesome. Like she is so down to earth. She is so humble, like humble. And she just makes you feel like you're big, like you can like make anything happen. And it's very encouraging because a lot of the times like I feel like a lot of like seniority doesn't really want to give back to the younger generation. So with her I got the chance to see that because I felt like she has invested so much with her wise words, you know. And you know what, I wrote to her before the Supreme Court got the DACA case, right? And I actually have the letter right here.
Oh, you have it framed up. I feel like I've seen it somewhere also. Yeah.
I posted this like 600 times, girl. Yeah, this is it. This is it. I'm hiding over here because it's my address, but
Right. Yeah, no worries. Oh, I love that.
yeah, but so I wrote to her and I was basically like inviting her to come out to the school where I was at, and she basically replied back with, "Hey, sorry, I can't because my work schedule." And after that, COVID happened, and then I want to say like a year later, my uncle, my adopted uncle, Uncle Willie, he owns a restaurant, and it's a Boricua restaurant, and she's a regular because her mom used to go there like every Sunday. And so I told my uncle, I was like, you know how I feel about her. Like, I really want to meet her. And he was like, don't worry. So I met her back in November of last year. And it was really cool to meet her. She is like, I want you to meet her because she is like so awesome, really awesome. Yeah.
And that's so cool to me. That you met her through community, like you said, like your uncle's like restaurant, because she still frequents that and is still part of the community in like this very humble way. And I think that that's really cool. And like you got a letter from her back even before that. I just think that's amazing. Like again, you just reaching out, like I guess that's like the OGDM, just writing letters to people. Yeah, and you know the other people that I know, you also like when you connected me with Bambadjan, but that was also like really really cool. I don't know if you have like anything to say about how y'all met.
Yeah, so I met him because, you know, it was the DACA case was being heard of the Supreme Court. And I remember that we were like marching together, you know, and I was like, wait a minute, I know him. I've seen him somewhere. And then I was like, he's a DACA recipient and he's big into, you know, being an activist. So I went up to him and I was like, hey, my name is Ilse Cruz. I'm a DACA recipient and, you know, I saw your movie. And I was like, I'm so glad you're here because I feel like when it comes down to immigration, not a lot of people know about like the African community also, it's a big community as well. So it was really cool to get connected with him because he was being like a big activist about it. And I remember telling him, hey, I'm going to connect you with someone that's at Harvard and she wants to be like a producer. She's going to be big, so you got to talk to her. So he was like, yes, of course, please connect me with her. And yeah.
That was really cool because I was just like getting started with like film and everything. And like now I'm working with the Undocumented Filmmakers Collective and doing artist dev with them. And that's like really cool to, it was really, he was the first one that I saw that I was like, oh, like, we're in Hollywood too, as like actors and things like that. So it was really, really nice to get to talk to him through you. Ilse was actually part of the campaign for Joe Biden to win the presidency this past presidential election here in the US and was even recently at the White House. She's not only badass enough to, be in the same spaces as some very powerful people, to be invited to like work with these people who are very powerful. She's also not afraid to hold these people accountable, right? We all know, especially like if you're someone who is undocumented or like has any kind of like different immigration status in the US, like how it goes, all the promises. She's not afraid to keep them accountable. So yes, she did, work for this campaign for Joe Biden. Then, when Telemundo was like, hey, let's be on a roundtable interview, it was her and a couple other DACA recipients. She was like, Joe Biden, you need to ponerte las pilas, right? Which is a Spanish, term, like phrase, translates to like put on your batteries. Basically saying like, let's get into gear, like get into high gear, put your thinking cap on, do something about it. And I think, on public national television, which, I think is something that within the immigrant community, we were looking for accountability, right? We're rooting for these people to be in power. We're gonna call them out once we do get them into power, and that's exactly what Ilse did. What I admire about you is like you worked on it, and you're still calling like for accountability. Like you were on Telemundo, telling Biden to ponerse las pilas. Like I admire that about you. So how has that been, and like what pushes you for that? And have you heard anything back?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been really upset because it just feels like a nonstop cycle. And so I did work on the campaign. It is my job to hold them accountable because that's what politicians are going to do. Once they get to their power, they're going to forget, right? But it's our job as society to be like, hey, remember when you said this, and that? Let's put some action on it. And so I did hear back from the campaign, from the people that I worked with on the campaign. There's something in the works that I can't really talk about it too much. But yeah, I'm still calling them out. And it's not over just because the Biden administration is in power. If anything, this is where we should be putting more pressure on because we know where the Republicans stand when it comes down to immigration, but the Democrats, they're so quick to be like, hey, yes, vote for us, use our story. And then later on they forget. So it's like, I feel like as society, we had to keep like telling them like, hey, ¿dónde están? Like, ¿dónde están las cosas que prometieron? Like, where are we with this? Right now with DACA, we have, I guess, something pending in the Texas court, which most likely is not going to rule in our favor. Because again, Trump put that judge in power and he's a Republican and we know how they feel about us. And so I don't think we're gonna come out with a good outcome with that. But I think this is where the Biden administration should take, a big step and should take action. Like this is the perfect opportunity. And it's about to be 2 years since they've been in charge of the White House.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this right here would be the perfect time for them to act on it. And let's not also forget that, elections are coming up. All of those seats are going to be up. So this is where we should be like, hey, you want to keep your job? Ponte las pilas,
Right. And like, I think sometimes like we get frustrated, like tired because sometimes it feels like the same thing over and over. Like what what do you tell yourself when you're telling you keep going? I mean, obviously our personal stories are what keeps us going and our personal experience, but like, is there anything that you're just like, you always tell yourself that you're like, okay, this is how we keep going?
Yeah, I just had to tell myself that no matter what, I'm gonna be successful. Like point blank, period. Like I don't have a backup plan. Like they're not gonna steal away my education. So that's something that I have to stay firm, and for me, my education has been a big deal, and I worked hard. I worked multiple jobs to pay for tuition. I started school where it wasn't even cool to talk about being undocumented. That's how long I've been an activist. And so I think the biggest thing is telling myself, like, you got this. Like, nadie te va a quitar nada. Like, because I feel like, I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like I have become so like insensitive to any immigration news. Like I feel like I used to get my hopes up. I used to be like, oh my God, finally. And then now it's like, okay, it's just another news, and it's like, it's sad because you see a lot of like injustices in the news. And it's also like discouraging. So that's why I try to keep away from that part until I actually see something pass.
No, I definitely like feel that and have felt that. And like you said, actually, like even recently, like it used to like really affect me. Like any little news, I'd be like, oh my gosh, right? And I think after I graduated and I was like caught up in like my own life too, I was like, okay, like it became easier to kind of move on or like avoid it, but then it feels like I'm avoiding information sometimes. It's so complicated, but oh, it's
Yeah.
a give and take, because then also you protect your mental health, but also stay informed, like that little balance there.
Yeah, it's a lot of anxiety. It's given unbalanced.
Right, right. Literally. Something that I also spoke to Jax from Adelita's Apparel about on their episode was online visibility, as a undocumented person, as someone with DACA, in the digital space specifically, and how it affects us as individuals and also the community. The conversation has always been very dynamic and very interesting about visibility within the undocumented community, because there's a range of immigration statuses, there's a range of opinions, of comfort levels with speaking publicly and with visibility. So everyone's going to have a different opinion on it, a different comfort level on it. How do you think like the immigration movement will move forward in a more digital space?
Yeah, I think the immigration movement right now needs to be educated on a lot of things, financially, legal, how to grow, how to invest, all of that stuff. Because my mom didn't know. My mom was so focused on just providing food for me, and giving me a good education that she didn't have time to teach herself how to, you know, um, have a business, or create a 401k, or have a retirement plan, because again, those things are not offered to us, or we don't know about because we don't have access to that. And so I feel like the immigration community right now should really focus on learning how to educate their peoples, how to basically have some sort of structure and plan. Because I mean, I had to teach my mom, like, hey mom, we should have a plan for a retirement for you. And she's like, man, I wish I would have known this back when I was your age. And it's kind of hard because a lot of the things are happening on like social media, or a lot of the things are like more like digital now. And so we forget that the elders don't really have access to that. Like me working at the state attorney's office, I talk to victims of domestic violence that basically don't know how to drop charges or can't come in because they don't have an ID, because they're undocumented. So it's like, man, like I really feel like that the act should like start like communicating that stuff to their communities. And a part of that is, you don't have to be involved in a nonprofit. Like you can go and read and tell them about, hey, this is an NFT, this is what crypto, these are stocks.
No, I agree. And like you bring up such like a good point. I was talking to Jax, Yatsiri from Adelita's Apparel about that, like that generational difference within like the immigrant community of like they are able to have this like very successful and growing online business, right? And but like how do you include people who are older who might not know how to use social media, who don't know like what is e-commerce, how does e-commerce work, and like how do we bring like I think those generations and the division of generations within the immigrant community have like always been like, you know, you have the people who are like uh uh here there's the generation of immigrants who came during like amnesty, then you have like the people who didn't, then you have the people who are DACA recipients, and then you have a younger generation who is not eligible for DACA, right? And so we've always been divided by these generations. How do we bring ourselves together? Reminding me of a quote like literally united we dream, like you always like talk about that. I've seen you like really put that up. Like how do you think, what would be like a good way do you think to like bring all of that together generationally?
I think, basically kind of what you did with your YouTube video, branding yourself and creating those spaces for those people. It doesn't hurt to create a TikTok and tell people, like, hey, this is an NFT, you know, or hey, this are your victim rights, or little things like that. I feel like social media can be used in a way that could be helpful and educational to us and everybody, because although my mom is not tech savvy, pero se mete on Facebook, se mete in TikToks. So, sometimes she's like, hey, look at this news. So having those spaces to create knowledge to others and passing it on is a big deal.
Yeah, education always ends up being like the biggest thing, like even outside of university, just like even technical education, like about how to use like the internet and technology, like that ends up being the bottom line a lot of times, with also we want to get more people, like if all the resources are online, okay, let's teach people about the digital space, right? There's also a lot of surveillance that comes along with that. um I don't know if like you also have any thoughts on that, of like, when ICE like starts to look through activist social media and things like that.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's a huge thing. That has been a huge thing for me in my life because like I know where I'm going career wise, and I don't want to look back and people find a bunch of crazy tweets about me, or they pull the picture with me and drinks. I think you have to keep in mind like what you put out, because what you put on your social media is who you're trying to portray. So just be mindful that you're not putting crazy things up there, because you might ruin your chance to be here just for something petty, and we don't know what those officers they think, or we don't know where they stand. So it's like it's crazy how somebody can really change your lives, how somebody can really affect your life also.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's not talked about a lot, that they could pull up your social media against you in a lot of stuff. And I'm always like wishing like that wasn't the case, right? Like people can be who they are online, but then it's like that thing that people don't talk about, that people don't know about, is that even online now we're being surveyed, and like you have to curate an image of like the good immigrant, right? Or like at least not of any bad immigrant behavior, quote unquote,
Mhm.
which sucks.
Yeah.
I wanted Ilse's take on visibility because she has been someone who has been very public about her story, about her narrative, and her experiences. And also, she is a bit older than me, not much older. Do not get it twisted. She's not that much older than me. But, the differences in our ages is enough to where she, as she talks about it, she was sharing her story at a time that was not very welcoming. It was very hostile. We both come from southern states, and me particularly, like in Georgia, it's not always a welcome narrative. And so I think both of us sharing our stories at different times in our lives, I think I definitely had the benefit of people like Ilse who came before me, who were sharing their stories, opened up a lot more spaces for the people that shared their stories afterwards. So I definitely do think I came in it when I was sharing, my stuff. It came at a time where like it was a bit more welcoming because of the work that people like Ilse had already been doing.
Yeah, well, in the beginning, when I was, I want to say 14, 15, I really didn't know what I was doing. When it comes down to advocating, I was just advocating, for my right, community rights, for the immigrant rights, And so I think I made a lot of connections within the media, but a lot of the times, like, the media would just like really twist your story, or really say something that just shouldn't be there. And so I became very selective with the interviews that I decided to go on, just because I was tired of basically just being like, oh, the DACA recipient, like, and it took a struggle for me to even come out, as undocumented, because when I started speaking about immigration, it wasn't cool like how it is now, it was basically a scary for me, because I was gonna put out my information, like, that I'm a DACA recipient, and also my family, my mom, and so I'm not gonna lie, it hasn't been easy sharing like my personal life also, because uno nunca sabe, la gente es loca, so I think my advice with that would just be mindful of what you share. Definitely, like, I don't post live. Like, if I'm doing something, like, I don't post in that minute. I think there was like a rapper that I was out in Cali, and he posted a location where they were eating, and then he got shot. So, it's sad to hear stories like that, but you also got to keep like very private of what you do, keep a certain stance, and also branding yourself.
Yeah, I think like I started this series because I was on the internet a lot, and I've been on the internet since I was like a kid, and I've learned some hard lessons as well. So I'm trying to find that balance of like, wow, I've created like a community online, and I've like found really cool people through these platforms, but I also need to balance that out. How do I protect myself and others and things and privacy? And it gets more complicated as we go along, but I feel that about, not posting like where you are in that moment, like uh that's probably like the biggest thing. And I really appreciate like your visibility and sharing your story, because I think like us as DACA recipients also have an advantage sometimes of like having some kind of protection and people wanting to share our stories. Do you have like any questions that you wish people asked you, or any narratives that you wish people would talk about more when they were interviewing?
Yeah, I wish that people would ask more about like the DACA recipients that work at McDonald's, the DACA recipients that are cleaning houses, the DACA recipients that are struggling to keep their family alive. I don't really like how the media just portrays like the good quote unquote DACA recipients, like just the ones that have like higher ed education, and like, let's also give credit where credit is due. Like, there's people that like pick up your oranges, like here in the state of Florida, we're big into orange juice. Like, there's people that basically make your food happen, so I really wish we will focus on essential workers, people that work on the corners, like street vendors, people that sell flowers. I really wish we will focus on those stories, because those stories are so valuable.
I completely agree. Like, even just like people will focus on our stories because we've done like really cool things, but like, what if there's someone who is undocumented, didn't get DACA for any minor thing, and maybe they don't want to be a lawyer, a doctor, or anything big. They just want to like have a family, like as simple as that. Like, that's also an important story and narrative and thing that we need to think about, right? Yeah, I completely agree with you there.
Yeah. There's a lot of DACA recipients that I know that um, they couldn't go to school because either their state wasn't offering like like driver's licenses, and so they were like, you know what, I'm just gonna create my own business, and they created their own business from working from home. And I was like, what, you could do that? Like, I wish I would have been educated about that, because those are like resources that we don't. And so it's kind of crazy to see that a lot of the DACA recipients that are not talked about, they're making things happen for themselves. And I feel like eventually we'll hear, but it's good to hear those stories and find those stories, because those stories make it feel like for other people like it could be possible, at least for me, you know.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about like that prioritization of specifically like DACA recipients? Because I know like, we have like different statuses all across the board, right? And the new younger generation of people who are undocumented who didn't qualify for DACA because it was rescinded or like no new applications were filled, like how are we gonna bring them into the fold? Like what do you think are like some of maybe something that's dangerous about focusing just on DACA recipients?
Yeah, I think we also gotta focus on our parents. They're the real dreamers, and the generation after that also, and even the new DACA recipients, the ones that could even qualify. Like I think we had to be an example for them. Like for me, whenever I get an interview, and if I already spoke on that channel, or if I feel like, man, I really should give the chance to this person because this person didn't get DACA because it was a day later after their birthday and they don't qualify. Like, I feel like we should be providing those opportunities to our community. Like, think of somebody when it comes down to sharing something or educating on something, because it goes a long way, you know? Like, don't interview me, interview the person that couldn't get DACA, you know? Because they have it 10 times harder than me.
So I know this series is called The Most Interesting People on My Timeline. However, for this segment, I turn it over to my featured guest to put me onto something new and tell me about the most interesting people on their timeline.
I have two people. My husband, Pinto Picasso. I think he's so interesting just because he comes from Puerto Rico, from very humble beginnings, and he is such a hard worker, and he's big in the bachata industry right now. And just seeing how he made it happen from being signed with Daddy Yankee for 10 years to working on his own music and being an independent artist to working with Evie Queen, you know, and just seeing like so much that goes behind the scenes of how to create a song or a music video. I'm like, man, like that's a lot, you know. And I think he's interesting because music is a language that doesn't need to be understood yet. Like you feel it and you get it, you know. So I think he's interesting because of that. And the second person is my best friend Bello. He just graduated from Harvard Law, and he was one of the first few people that basically was able to walk me through my law school application. And Bello is the type of person that if you tell him no, he's gonna find a way. And he found a way to summer contribution where they were taking a certain percentage from their students at Harvard, and you know it was just wasn't right. He made that happen by talking about it on like social media, Twitter, and then he was able to get an interview with like a big agency to talk about it. So he's like very like motivational. He's the person that you'll be like, yeah, like he had a crazy story, but you see why the crazy story was so good and so impactful.
You can find the list of the most interesting people on Ilse's timeline down in the description, as well as on taniadoes.com/Ilse Cruz. And as law school decisions approach and Ilse is anxiously waiting for good news, she shares how she's trying to keep in community during this time and beyond. You know, is there anything cool like in your future that's coming up? Like what's next for you?
Oh man, getting into law school. Getting into law school. I feel like I have like a lot of anxiety because I could be getting a call in a minute from any law schools. At the same time, I feel like I know what I bring to the table. So if they want to miss out on greatness, and I mean this in the most humblest way ever, but I know that I'm going to be a good attorney. You know, the goal is to come back to the state attorney's office as a prosecutor and work my way up to being a judge. And so that to me is really exciting. You know, my mentor, Tarlika Navarro, she has taught me so much about like justice and the legal field. And it's really good to see that, you know, the 2% of Latinas are attorneys is actually changing. And if I could share a little bit of that with people, like I'm always happy to, I'm always open to checking my DMs and seeing if people want help,
Yeah, and with that, where can people find you? Where would you like to be found online?
Yeah, so mainly Instagram. Instagram, it's, Ilse, Ilse Cruz, Cruz with 2 Z's. They can also find me on LinkedIn. I have a Twitter, which is the same handles. And always shoot me an email as well, I'll put my email up somewhere. But yeah, I'm always open to talking to people.
That's it for this episode. You can watch and or listen to more episodes anywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And you can find all links and information on my featured guest at taniadoes.com/interesting people. There's also bonus content on pages now, if you haven't noticed. For Che's episode, as well as for this episode, there's actually bonus content because I have clips of extra things that we talked about that just didn't make it into the episode for time's sake. But you can go on my website on each individual page to get a little bonus conversation if you really want it. Next week, I speak to a badass entrepreneur, fashion designer, writer, artist who, like Ilse, is also extremely involved in the undocumented community and advocating for immigrant rights, and whose clothing has been worn by some pretty dope people like D Smoke and Sway Lee's. Stay tuned for next week. You can follow me, your host and producer, Tania, at Taniadoes on Instagram and TikTok, and make sure to follow the social pages for this podcast at Interesting People Pod on Instagram and TikTok. And make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you know when the next episode comes out. Thank you for tuning in. Stay, connected, stay creating beautiful things, and I'll see y'all in the next episode.